but it's all been quite enjoyable. So it has. So hopefully it'll come back.
I won't be hiding anything underneath my bed, or in the fridge, or on the roof, or in the garden shed. Gonna hide this box so deep where it cannot be found. My box will be right out of sight, hiding underground.
What have you enjoyed making the most?
The rocket. So, and
Talk me through the rocket. Let's go and have a look at the rocket.
the rocket started off as 2 bins, large bean tins, and the dustbin lid, removable pipes, so that the puppet can get his hand up, lampshade, and a fisherman's buoy for the nose. Getting it right was important, you know, so because they spent the whole episode in the rocket.
And what made you think of making it from various different used objects?
Shane gives me a drawing, and he gets more or less 95% of what he puts on paper.
Right.
So
right.
it ends up pretty good.
How long does it take to make the rocket?
More or less took about 3 days, 2 days to 3 days, and Todd was able to fit into it, and he's a larger man than I am, so which made it all worthwhile.
Much larger, it has to be said. much larger.
Yes, I'm only 5'6", but the shed and the rocket are my favourite pieces. So
Terrific.
Everyone will wanna know what's in my special box. If you want that box.
What? Just give me sort of your what you thought when you first came onto the show, and how you approached the design, and what was the biggest challenge?
Probably the biggest challenge was getting inside their head. Firstly, finding out whose world. It was Big's world, but everything is big sized. But trying to make things that small can use and that big can use. And even when they're standing together, one is so big and one is so small. So trying to make things that aren't too small for big and things that aren't too big for small. It's trying to get a sense of scale to put everything in the right proportions for everybody. And that was one of the biggest things is to figure out. And also, whenever something becomes real, you know, whenever you have to, when you can use a real tin or you have to make a tin, you know, because we had a mixture of things, or sometimes we had to paint things or add bits too, you know. It's trying to think like a child again, probably, really, you know. Even the fact that, you know, I kept asking questions, where do they buy their groceries? Why do they always eat sandwiches? It's just trying to get back into that age thing again, and imagine how a kid thinks, you know. And I think the show comes across as like that, especially small. It's very much like that, and you can sort of see that there's Big is obviously considerably older than Small, you know, and he's the sensible one. It's kind of like two brothers, you know. Who made it? Did Big make it or did Small make it? You know, if Big makes it, it's quite well done, but not perfect. And if Small makes it, it's really badly done, you know. So you have to learn who's made the prop, or who's it for. Big is pretty good, but Small is terrible. Where Big can draw considerably better. This will be another Small one. Big's more of an architect or a designer, and he does blueprints of everything. So that was a machine he designed. That was his. I think it's something for squashing vegetables. So what he always does before he builds it in his shed, he does a little blueprint. And Big's also into maps. He loves drawing maps, you know, to show where the pond is, where the apple tree is, where his shed is. And arrows, he loves arrows. They love arrows to point things. Yeah, and that's a slightly better. Big's maps are usually a bit nicer than Small's. Small's a bit more basic. That'll be a drawing that Big has done and Small has drawn himself in. It is a kind of strange world that they live in, because they're well, the three things that happen every week is apples fall out of the tree onto Big's head. He still hasn't learned not to sit underneath the apple tree. They eat sandwiches. We have hundreds, every flavour of sandwiches that you could imagine. Every type of banana, dead bananas, squash bananas, ripe bananas, musty bananas. And every time they open a cupboard, things fall out. So they never stack anything very well. So those are the things that happen constantly.
If you want that box to open, don't just try to knock. You've got to put that special key inside that special lock.
So when people look at that pond, I think many people would think there's real water there.
Yeah.
Tell us how you create it.
We use stuff called pallet wrap. You know, whenever you go to a shop and you see this sort of like clear plastics wound round and round and round pallets to keep things together. So that's stretched across perspex, and it naturally sticks to itself. So when you just slowly lift it, the air catches underneath and just slowly moves it. So when it's very gently, it's a process of just learning how much pallet wrap to put on, and how hard or how soft to lift it. So this little device is for making our water splashes. It's a piece of cardboard tube with a balloon taped onto one end and a bag of iridescent coloured sequins. So you fill that up inside, not fill it up, but put a few inside, and then we pull the balloon down, and whenever you pop it up, it looks like a splash, because the puppets can't get wet or use any liquids. We had a scene as well with rain, but it would have taken too many and it would have been too consistent that the whole set would have been covered in sequins. So that's what we left out of a bag. That bag was filled to here. There's also an episode where the camera pans down actually right through the water and goes underwater, which was not a mistake, but when the camera was sitting, when they were setting a shot up, the tripod slipped, or the camera just slowly dropped down, and when they realised, they saw it on the monitor that it worked, so they added that shot in. I mean, it's quite a nice idea. And that's quite an interesting thing, working with the puppets in general, all the things that you can't use any liquids or anything that will mess their fur up or make them dirty. No matter what it is, nothing that can be so sticky or can damage the puppet, so you have to try and invent all these things. Cornflakes can be cornflakes, but we can't use milk. And so we had an episode about soup. There's lots of orange juice and drinks. Ice cream. So this is fake ice cream, which is made from this soft clay. But it's perfect. They can touch it, and we can paint it and work with it. It doesn't do any damage to anybody. And even things like vegetables, like a cooked piece of cauliflower, which would be mushy, that's cast in acrylic and then painted. So I mean, you can do whatever you want, but it looks close enough to the real thing. Even in the hamburgers, the lettuce is plastic lettuce, and the cheese is foam, and the bread buns are just carved polystyrene that's painted. Same with the jam and the sandwiches. Everything has to be completely dry. We have to use a heat gun to dry the paint quicker, to make sure it's 100% dry. Because if an actor's touching it, doesn't really matter if their hands get a bit of paint on it, but the puppets, you only get one chance.
That special lock. Wanna dig down deeper and hide my special box. Everyone wanna know what's in my special box.
Oh, that's good. Chiaroscuro lighting. Very nice. You had to do moonlight, sunset, the blink of the hour, didn't you?
Yeah, so we started off in day, and then we gradually brought it down from day into starting with the sun setting, and as it got lower behind the set, we just graduated to the sun, and then warmed up the clouds and put a red into the clouds as if the sun was lighting the clouds behind. It's quite enjoyable to see, use all the different GoPros. We have a lightning GoPro, we have shooting stars GoPro, which we haven't used yet, and then we can create the sun with a light for the sun and the moon. This here opens, is called an iris, and it opens and closes, so you can create the different sizes. And then what we can do with this GoPro, if we put this behind the iris, we can make a moon, and it looks like the patterns on the moon instead of clouds, so it's the patterns on the moon. It is quite interesting. Every day is different.